morning. My talk this morning is maybe a little bit different from what you're going to hear from the rest of my friends over here. I'm going to talk about the democratization of power and how entrepreneurship influences it, and how each and every one of us is able to actually, in his own way, probably change the world that is around him. So I will, it is what I call the rise of the citizen entrepreneur. It is the rise, yes, that's me. And how power of the things that you do every single day, without you knowing, probably is going to change the world. In a new book that just came out, written by a gentleman by the name of Muassis Naim, called The End of Power, he basically tells us power is totally fragmented, and I think all of us that are in technology understand that. No one holds the keys to power. There are positive results from this transformation in the nature of power because it creates more opportunities for citizens and consumers. It ends monopolies and opens the door for new players on the economic and political level. Anita Roddick, the late founder of The Body Shop, is famously quoted in saying, if you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. So this is about that mosquito that is able to really bother whoever that thinks is not bothered. So it is also the story of role models and how role models, even without knowing it, are actually impacting the world. This Roger Bannister. Have you ever heard of Roger Bannister? Roger Bannister is very famous. He's the first man that ran the mile in less than 4 minutes in history. He was called the most incredible athlete in the 20th century. Roger Bannister was studying at Oxford to be a doctor, didn't know he was going to actually break that 4-minute mile, and suddenly he does. But that's not the story. It's a fantastic feat. The story is just a few weeks later, a gentleman from Australia broke that record again. And then again, and then again, and then again. Within a year, 18 people had broken that incredibly undoable 4-minute mile. So there is a power in basically people thinking, if he can, then I can. And this is what I think the role of entrepreneurs are. This is why entrepreneurs should remember always that they are role models, and how they affect the world and what they do affects everything and everyone around them. They're always being copied. They're always being watched. They inspire all the time. We need to remember that. Even if we don't mean to be leaders, there is that leadership effect on every single individual that is going out there and building something. So there is that, when you talk about the inspiring process of that entrepreneur. We think, if you wanted to go all the way back in history to Mahatma Gandhi, when Mahatma Gandhi decided he wanted to rebel against the colonial power of the British in India, he went out and did a small act. People didn't think it was going to be very effective. He did what he called the Salt March. He went out to break the monopoly of the British, taxing the salt industry in India and selling only British salt to Indians. And then that simple act of going to the sea and actually working on the salt has created massive upheavals, which led to eventually the independence of India. When Martin Luther King was asked what inspired him to go through his movement, he says, Gandhi was always on my mind. He obviously never met him, never knew anything about how that effectively happened, but he says, we took the Gandhi story and moved in it. When Muhammad Bouazizi in Tunisia, for those of you that know the Arab Spring, when Muhammad Bouazizi in Tunisia went out and burned himself, well, he was a micro-entrepreneur selling vegetables, but he triggered a massive change process across the region, which effectively affected, I need to stop this from rolling, which affected not only the region, not only the change that we are seeing in the region, it affected people in Wall Street. When the Occupy Wall Street movement leaders were asked, what inspired you? They said Tahrir Square. And what inspired Tahrir Square? It's that simple act of Muhammad Bouazizi saying, I am not going to accept the status quo by burning himself. A wrong act to do, but triggered massive change. And very recently, a gentleman by the name of Hisham Faqih, you probably all saw his video. He came out with a simple video to protest the woman not driving in Saudi Arabia. He came out with a song that was called No Woman, No Drive. And No Woman, No Drive, not knowing to him, he calls himself a social activist and an artist, has over 9 million views on YouTube today. It became the rallying cry for the woman driving movement in Saudi Arabia. He didn't mean to. He just went out and did it. And then Wa'il Ghunaim, some of you might know him. He is called the poster child of the Egyptian revolution. In 2010, went out and established a simple web page on a simple Facebook page that's called We Are All Muhammad Saeed. So Khalid Saeed, sorry. Khalid Saeed was a guy that was persecuted in Alexandria. And then Wa'il, who is a Googler, decided to just out of passion say, I want to open a page that says we are all supporting this guy. And then effectively, that single page went viral and then led to the first Tahrir Square mass protests on the 25th of January of 2011. And so if you talk to Wa'il, and I talked to him, he says, I didn't know I was doing that. I was just going out and doing what everybody does. You do your page and hope that somebody pays attention, but I didn't know that it was going to lead to that massive change. And then there is also the second issue that I wanted to address with that power of role models is they show us that it actually can be done. Story from our region, our friends that founded Maktub, which was the largest online Arab portal that was sold to Yahoo, the single largest internet acquisition in this region, probably for $165 million. They didn't know that they were creating an industry, but they actually were, because every single person after that 2009 acquisition in the space, in the region, said it can be done. If these two guys can found a company and build it and get acquired and make money out of it and create wealth, it can be done. What happened after that? At least 6 or 7 people that graduated from that company, created new businesses, raised over $100 to $200 million, actually built businesses. They were hiring, Maktub had about 300 employees in it. Today, the people that were directly, not indirectly, directly touched or influenced by Maktub have created 2,000 jobs and has raised the most amount of money in the venture capital space and the internet space in the Middle East. Quite powerful. You talk to Samih and Hussam, they said we were just building a business. But they are fantastic role models and people that say if they can do it, then we can do it. A Jordanian hacker who I recently met by the name of Amjad Mas'ad. Amjad was a hacker, he was a rebel, hated school, dropped out. He's only 27 years old now. And as a matter of his stating a statement of rebellion, he goes out and creates a simple way to code on the web, on the web page, on the browser. And he started posting his code on open source systems. And then he went to something called Code Academy. I'm pretty sure many of you know what Code Academy. And then he found every day that every time he publishes something on an open source, he finds that Code Academy is taking advantage of it. And then they eventually connected with him and said, oh, all your technology is, you're the backbone of our technology. So effectively, he got hired by these people, not knowing. And he became an example of Jordanian techies that said, oh my God, if this guy who's a dropout, effectively and we thought he's never going to make it. He is a big shot now in New York, so it changed the scene. People have felt that sense of empowerment. And then thirdly, the thing I want to touch on is that obviously entrepreneurs are innovators and disruptors of the status quo. And they create new industries without necessarily thinking about it. When Muhammad Yunus, the founder and father of microfinance in Bangladesh and the recipient of the Nobel Prize, the first entrepreneur from our region, or the first entrepreneur in the world to have ever received the Nobel Peace Prize, Muhammad Yunus was only back in the 70s, walking among the poor in his country, and gave $27 only to about, I don't know, 20 or 30 different poor people who wanted a loan. They ended up saying, we only need that much, $27. And what happened after that? You know, the industry touches 130 million people today. There's over $25 billion in the microfinance industry today, with over 2,500 microfinance institutions that feel they're empowering the poor in giving them access to finance. Quite powerful, but if you talk to Muhammad Yunus, he'll tell you, I didn't know I was creating a global movement. But he did, because people felt that if that innovator, that innovative way of giving the poor who are unbankable to suddenly loan them money is incredible. And you know, as you know, the industry has empowered women more than anything else. 85% of the microfinance recipients are women, and unlike many other industries, they have a payback of about 97%. Very little write-offs. And then, as you know, also the story of Shol, of Khan, the Khan Academy. The Khan Academy, he also was only simply tutoring his niece to learn mathematics, and he started posting his stuff on YouTube. And then today, he has changed the way people learn. He has changed the idea of a classroom. There are more than 700 million exercises, 700 million views and exercises that have been completed because of the Khan Academy online. So again, a guy that was simply doing something for his niece effectively changes the way we view education and learning altogether, and is at the heart of the MOOCs today. The revolution of online education was that story from Khan. Lastly, it leads to people addressing and thinking that they're outside of government. It leads to people thinking that they can actually solve global problems, global issues, global challenges. So Bill Gates, you all know his story. Bill Gates goes out and says, I want to give all my wealth before I die. You know that. Bill Gates is committed to give every single penny of his wealth before him and his wife perish. And he will give it to solve global issues. His contribution to that issue has led to a mass movement. Warren Buffett follows him and says, I want to do what you're going to do. I'm going to give my children a couple of $1 billion, just so that I don't say I didn't give my kids money, but then I'm going to give all my money away. And today, there are 113 billionaires that have said they're going to give up at least half of their wealth in a pledge that Bill Gates led to solve global issues through nonprofits. Quite a powerful statement, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. It's quite a powerful movement that basically somebody says, who comes out from the entrepreneurial world and says, I can actually change the world. And then he says, I want to solve the issue of polio. So he goes and links up with the United Nations and different vaccines organizations. And today, if you didn't know, polio has been practically eradicated across the world. There are only 3 countries that have found a small number of polio victims, but polio is no longer in existence because of the power of an individual that said, I am going to actually go out and use my power to do that. Jeff Skoll, who was the first employee and the first president of eBay, has done the same. He says, you know what, I don't want only to pledge to Bill Gates. I want to go out and establish something that addresses the global issues that I think matter most. And he created something that is called the Global Threats Fund. The Global Threats Fund slogan says, to safeguard humanity from global threats. Very simple. He says, I will address the issues of climate change, water security, pandemics, Middle East peace, and nuclear proliferation. And he assembles a team of people that each is focusing on this issue, and he is mobilizing governments around these issues today. So it's not governments that are going out to people. He is actually mobilizing governments and telling them, you have to address these issues, and I have the resources if you don't to address these issues. And he brings in the private sector, the governments, and the non-profit organizations and civil society to actually come up with these solutions. Quite powerful statements, quite powerful entrepreneurs that either intentionally or unintentionally feel that they can actually change the world. So this is a statement that says every one of us need to be aware of that power and need to be aware that we are being watched and we can actually influence no matter how big or how small. There is, I'm going to conclude here with a quote from Edward Lorenz. Edward Lorenz is the founder of the concept, or the discoverer of a concept, or the promoter of a concept of the butterfly effect. He says the fluttering of a butterfly's wing in Rio de Janeiro, amplified by atmospheric currents, could cause a tornado in Texas 2 weeks later, at the core of the chaos theory process. So my conclusion is any one of us can be a butterfly flapping their wings. Thank you.